Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran. Patch 9.1 is going to be available for testing next week on PTR. We're getting character customizations, we're getting new content like time walking, as well as a variety of different class and talent changes. In this video, I wanted to go over some of my personal things that I would enjoy for our classes. This isn't really a serious meta discussion of how to fundamentally improve classes, just some of the things that I think would be more fun to add to classes going forward. I usually like seeing maybe making talent rows more competitive so there isn't just one option in a row, or maybe seeing fun mechanics from all the expansions returning. So let's dive into my personal wish list. Starting off with the Rogue, since this is my main, I have not a lot of complaints. For my time playing Rogue, I feel like we have some talents in certain rows that are just not super competitive. As in a whole row, there's generally one talent that's like the best in slot option, no matter whether you do an AoE fight, single target, or even PvP. So there's not a lot of variance. For example, I think it would be more exciting if an Outrow could play Loaded Dice or Dreadblades, the artifact weapon from Legion, but we're kind of stuck playing Alacrity with the simple haste buff because it's simply the most efficient option in the row. So small adjustments to make talents more competitive, or if there are certain talents that are just baseline, something the spec will pick in all situations, maybe it's time to make it a baseline part of the spec to add a new talent that's going to be more competitive in the row. Finally, and this is just a cherry on top, what if rogues had some sort of raid utility? Sometimes rogues are performing really well, and other times our damage is just subpar, and we might be outshined by other melee classes, especially those that bring something to the team. Having a raid utility means that even if your damage isn't fantastic, rogues are still wanted and are even needed inside of raid tiers. So what if we get some sort of a raid tier utility, maybe like smoke bomb return or something to help out our allies even if our damage isn't priority. I'm a big fan of mages and a huge proponent of playing arcane. Just something about that spec compared to fire and frost just fits me. But when it comes to mages in general, I think they're actually doing well. If anything, I think maybe we've had the same playstyle for mages for a while now. Ever since Legion artifact weapons, those really shaped the gameplay of mages, whether it is frost, fire, or arcane, with frost being all about big combustions, 100% crit, frost very RNG heavy with a bunch of lances and icicles. Arcane mages, while not super different with, arcane blast spamming, you still do that, but you also have Mark of Alunith, Touch of the Magi, really cool mechanics to play with. I just think mages maybe need a refresher. They've had the same playstyle since Legion, and maybe they could do certain things like adjust the RNG of Frost Mage. Sometimes it feels like your procs cannibalize one another. It would be cool if fire mages had a playstyle that maybe made you more passive damage rather than big combustion damage, so certain covenants could be a little bit more synergetic. And I'm a huge fan of the Kyrian playstyle with arcane and missiles. I wonder if maybe that would become a baseline playstyle going forward in future expansions. Death Knight is a class that I love. I think it was my second or third alt that I got leveling in Shadowlands, and I was super excited for it during the alpha and the beta. Frost is my all-time favorite. I just wish maybe two-hand playstyle was a bit more competitive in PvE environments because I really don't want to play Breath of Sindragosa. I know a lot of other people that don't enjoy Breath of Sindragosa. It's a good, strong playstyle, but I'm just not a fan of it. I want to wield the massive weapon, breaking enemies apart with obliterates. I just find that gameplay more fun. I think Frost Death Knights, some other talents, there's not a lot of room to pick. Some talents you just don't pick in any AoE situation, whether you two-hand, dual-wield, whatever. So there are some dead talents in the spec. Otherwise, the spec is still really fun. I also wish Frost Death Knights had some sort of AoE damage-dealing rune power spender, like Frost Strike, but that's AoE damage, similar to what Unholy Death Knight has with Epidemic and Death Coil. Unholy, on the other hand, is not a playstyle that I really play often, so I wish I had more detailed stuff to explain when it comes to some of the changes that I would want to see, but everybody around me says that the spec doesn't feel great to play. It does good damage, but the gameplay isn't enjoyable, and that may have to do with the rune power and rune generation and how sometimes you'll feel like you'll have dead zones where you just don't have any buttons to press for 3 or 4 seconds at a time, and I wonder if maybe smoothness in gameplay is something they could revisit in the future. Hunters are great. I think everybody should have a hunter as an alt, and to this day I still stand by that statement. I've been having fun with my hunter, just casually PvPing or doing weekly keys, whether it's survival, bit of marksman, bit of BM, but I'm definitely a huge fan of survival. One thing we could talk about hunters is the fact that they're like porcelain cups. They are really, really squishy. They break easily. So I wonder if maybe some super glue to really toughen them up would help, or something along the lines of making them a little bit more survivable. In raids and dungeons, it's really apparent. In PvP, you do have defensive elements like legendaries that give you extra defensive value, but you're not going to run the same legendaries in dungeons and raids because you kind of want to do more damage. Also, a refresher to some of the talents I think is advised, particularly for survival, but also BM and MM. With survival in particular, certain talents just don't synergize well together. If you run a talent combo, it may just feel like they're talents that are just working against each other rather than synergizing together for a coherent playstyle. And if they maybe could adjust it slightly, I think that'll be a really good thing going forward. And then we have Druids, and I've had a bit of a mixed bag with Druids. I thought I would enjoy the Boomkin playstyle with the Eclipses, and I just feel like it's not for me. I thought it would be more fun because I remember somewhat of an Eclipse playstyle back in Cataclysm, which is the first time I tried playing Boomkin, which is the first time I played World of Warcraft, and just, I feel like Eclipse just didn't catch me as much. Maybe just personally me, and there's nothing the Blizzard can really do to fix that. Feral, on the other hand, I love to play, but it's so difficult to play. I think it's one of the harder play styles with a lot more micromanagement just to be able to dish out the same damage as everybody else. I wonder if it's time to change up the Feral. Maybe make it slightly easier and more new player friendly in some sense. Maybe make it all about bleeds rather than bites, because having a bleed heavy kitty has been a dream of mine, and it would be cool if Blizzard were to focus on bleed damage rather than bites for majority of your DPS. Warlocks are fun. I don't really have much to say about them. I've enjoyed Destruction as well as Demonology. Affliction has never been my cup of tea, but I am happy to see what they did with the soul shard spending. I feel like Malefic Rapture fits into the 2-target, 3-target AoE target playstyle better, but ever since the Malefic Rapture nerfs, it looks like they're just all about AoE damage, and they're not really brought for single target damage that much. I wonder if maybe that could be addressed, because a lot of people love the dot heavy gameplay of Affliction, and maybe they could somehow try to head back in that direction. Also, if they could add more talents that summon different types of demons to do different kinds of damage for Demonology, I would be a big fan of it, because I've always enjoyed the whole idea of summoning all these unique creatures from the Twisting Nether to do your bidding, and the more variety of them we can have, the more fun I think I would have with Demonology. Pally is also very, very fun. I've enjoyed mine as a Night Fae, and with 9.1.5 I'll probably be able to test out other covenants. For Paladin, I don't really have much to say. For Retribution, sometimes I feel a little slow, so maybe some movement tools with passive mobility I think could be good in the talent section. Maybe even adding talents where you could go for a very heavy setup, big damage during your wings, or maybe more passive damage that's good outside of your wing time. I think a lot of Paladins feel like there's maybe too much emphasis on wings, so having options so you can play more of a sustained based playstyle and change your damage profile might be better for dungeons, maybe even PvP, so you're not really all wings, all in or nothing kind of gameplay. I'm not a Holy Paladin or a Protection Paladin main, nor do I tank or heal that much, so I wish I could say more about those two, but I love the melee playstyle that Holy Paladins have evolved into. I'm a huge fan of that whole battle healer in the front lines with everybody else. And same thing, I like the heavy utility kit for Protection Paladin as well. Monks are awesome, especially Woundwalker. It is blasting dungeons. It is fantastic in raids. It's a monster in PvP. Not much I can really say about them. Mistweaver, I was hoping would be a lot stronger in PvP, and it hasn't turned out that way. Maybe Blizzard can do something to make him a little bit better and more considered in PvP. I don't see as many Brewmaster tanks when it comes to doing dungeons, like Mythic Plus keys for the weekly. It's usually Demon Hunters, Warriors, Paladins, Bear Druids. Bear Druids are very popular, so I wonder if maybe there could be some buffs for Brewmaster to make him a little bit stronger. Last time I remember they suffered heavily from magic damage, and in a lot of the Shadowlands dungeons there's quite a lot of magic damage going out, so maybe there could be some buffs along those lines. Outside of that, monks are fantastic, and now that most monks can play Necrolord, Kyrian, and even Night Fae to some extent, it looks like there's a little bit more variety of different covenants that you potentially could pick up. But right now I think Necrolord is just way too good, especially as Woundwalker, so if you haven't tried it, definitely check it out. Demon Hunter is one of the newer classes that I picked up in Shadowlands. It was one of the later classes that I decided to gear up. I originally didn't plan to play Demon Hunter in Shadowlands, but I've had fun with it. Metamorphosis build with Demonic, super fun. The Momentum build, while not everybody enjoys it, I like it. I like the whole dashing around and using your mobility as part of the gameplay for Demon Hunter, since you're such a mobile heavy class, and be able to strategically use your movement based abilities to enhance your damage. I personally enjoy it. Demon Hunters I think are actually kind of okay. Again, not super crazy in-depth experience with them, but most of the talents have a bit of competitive edge to it. There's actual options whether you want to run one or the other. One thing that I've always thought was kind of a missed opportunity is Demon Hunter Covenant legendaries. I feel like a lot of them didn't pan out to be as good as I wanted them to, and maybe Blizzard could go back and take a look at them again to make them a little bit more better, a little bit more even, a little bit more consistent, something that you actually would want to play. I think that would be a really good idea. Shaman was one of those classes that I made really early on as an old character. Enhancement has been a very fun playstyle. It hasn't changed too much, but it looks like as you're going from single target to AoE damage with different legendaries, your talents are shifting around. What's good and what isn't is different every single patch. I like variety, so for me, this is a plus. Restoration Shaman is also a fantastic healer, pretty easy to get into, and playing a bit of Battle Shaman gives you a little bit of elemental and restoration gameplay. I feel like that's probably one of the easiest healers to get into for Shadowlands, and to me, as someone who isn't really a healer main, I enjoy it a lot. Then there's Elemental, and I like Elemental for the AoE damage. I'm just not a big fan of this single target gameplay. It was the same playstyle as in BFA with a very kind of combo system of Lava Burst into maybe Ice Fury, into Stormkeeper Lightning Bolts, and then you kind of shift between fire damage into Frost or Nature, fire damage back to Frost or Nature, and it's just not my cup of tea, but their damage is fantastic, and all three Shaman specs are performing pretty well in PvP. I think maybe for Elemental, taking a second look at their talent row and making the choices that you have a little bit more competitive might be something worth doing. I guess maybe for the whole class in general, just to make sure the talents are a little bit more even, because there are some talents in the rows that have never really seen any competitive play so far, and I don't really know unless there's changes or buffs to them if they ever will. Now, when it comes to priests, it's hard for me to talk about them because I'm not a healer main. You have Discipline, you have Holy, both of them are healers, and I'm not a healer main or do any competitive healing in PvP or in raiding, so I feel there's very little I can contribute. But they're great playstyles. I love Disc. Holy is also fantastic, pretty easy to get into, and for the majority part, Covenants work well with them, except for Night Fae and Disc Priest. Something about it just desyncs. It's just the Atonement playstyle of putting up heals on your allies, which will provide them a buff for Atonement, where then when you damage enemies, allies with Atonement get a heal. The Night Fae Covenant ability doesn't synergize into that really well and ends up feeling pretty awkward. Maybe there's could be some room to shift it around. Shadow Priest, on the other hand, is a lot of fun. Huge fan of what they've done with it in Shadowlands, and I enjoy it to this day. Multiple Covenants that are actually pretty good for it. Great single target damage. I love that support utility they bring. They're awesome in Mythic Pluses, especially on bursting weeks, but I feel that there are some talents that are not really super competitive in their rows, so maybe taking a second look at the talents to make sure things are more viable and there's more options and choices for you to run as a class, I think would go a long way. And besides that, that's about all I have for my wish list. I'm actually enjoying playing my alts a ton. There's only a handful of changes that I would want to see, but I'm very excited to see what Blizzard is going to come up with some of these updates. Let me know in the comments if you have anything specifically for a wish list for what you would want to see out of your classes. What kind of mechanics from older expansions or patches would you want returned? Or maybe what kind of talents do you think could be baked right into the spec? Because now is the perfect time to get some adjustments and changes, and if Blizzard is going to be listening to suggestions, then I think it's a good idea to voice them. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments or hit me up on Discord, link down below. Thank you all, and I'll see all of you in the next one.